Welcome to Advanced TV Herstory. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams. This is the place where we connect the dots of TV and feminism to American culture and politics. Advanced TV Historians, we have a tremendous guest today who literally epitomizes what this podcast is all about. Because what we do is connect the dots of TV and feminism to American culture and politics, and we can't do it without some of the best stations, channels, networks, whatever you want to call it, that can be found today right there on your TV. We are so honored to have Neal Sabin, a kingpin at Weigel Broadcasting in Chicago. I can't tell you enough about the fact that Neal, who is the vice chair of Weigel Broadcasting, he is responsible for the management of, here it is, these TV, I call them stations because you know what? I'm just that old. So these networks, MeTV, Dabl, Start TV, Catchy Comedy, Heroes and Icons, Movies, which I always have to say into the remote, Movies Network, because I don't know what else to say. Story Television Network West, which is the Western Entertainment Series Television, MeTV Tunes. What am I missing, Neal?
One more, MeTV Plus, a secondary MeTV network that's on in about 40% of the country.
So who invented all of this? Who gave us this access? It's this guy right here, Neal, and he's going to talk to us. This is a long time in the making. 9 years ago, 2016 maybe, I discovered Heroes and Icons, and I saw that all it was a whole lineup of shows about men. And I sent a snail mail letter to Weigel Broadcasting. And I said, and I'm pretty sure the podcast was going at the time. And I said, when is there going to be a network of women's shows? Within like 3 months, boom, there came Start TV. And I just remember saying, you know, there had been Lifetime TV for women. And I was particularly ornery about the notion that we couldn't coexist in TV land. And so now you've created, not to be confused with TV Land, the network. Now you've created lots of other networks that do have male and female oriented, co-ed, all of it. Thank you for your love of vintage television.
Some of it's not as vintage as other television, but it's all, we try to make everything we have kind of timeless and memorable, because not everything that people call classic is really that good. And some series didn't age as well as others. Some of them, you have to view them as when they were produced, how they were produced, in what world. But a lot of times there is a backstory to those series that have real interest to them, and they're worth airing for that reason and other reasons. And there are others that need to be forgotten about, or you can just watch on demand on YouTube because there's 7 people who want to see them.
Sometimes I'm one of the 7. So you went to Northwestern University, and you were in the School of Communications, is, if I understand your bio correctly.
Yeah.
Radio, TV, and film.
Yes. If you talk about how I started, I really started because I watched a lot of television as a child. If you were to tell me as a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old what I would be doing right now, and I don't want my boss to hear this, but I would say, oh my God, it's the dream of a lifetime. I'll do it for anything and everywhere, whatever.
It's the dream of 2 lifetimes, because I wanted that job.
It's like, I remember the day that I got my first job in television. My parents were also moving out of the house we all grew up in. And I went home that day while they were cleaning out, and I went to my file cabinet with all my pretend TV schedules and articles and all that stuff. And I threw them all away. And I said, this is all my pretend. Now I'm going to do it for real. And here we are 40 something years later, and I've been able to create 10 television networks and work on local stations as well. And it's been very fulfilling. It's been challenging, and it's not easy, but it's what I love. And, you know, they always say it's not work when you love what you're doing. You know what? I love what I'm doing, but it's still work.
And your entire career, even though you're sitting in California right now, your entire career has been out of Chicago, which is extraordinary, and also a testament to the very unique niche Chicago has at that midpoint of the country. Explain a little bit more about the things you've done in Chicago and how you got to Weigel.
Well, Cynthia, that is such a true statement that I really believe about Chicago. This would not have happened in New York or LA because of the seriousness, the corporateness of the businesses of the business in those marketplaces. And there wasn't left an entrepreneurial owner, like the owner of Weigel Broadcasting, who to this day, it's still a family business. It's family owned and operated. The family is involved in every day to day operation. And it's in a lot of ways what broadcasting was really meant to be in this country, controlled by people who really care about service. And yes, they are business people. But I got to tell you, there are a lot of things we do at our networks that if this was all done by programming, by accounting and by accountants, you wouldn't see these shows on the air and you wouldn't see some of the things we do being done because we're not reporting for every quarterly earnings report. We're not trying to look good to stockholders. The stockholders are the people that sit in the offices there. And that's part of the uniqueness of Chicago. I mean, the local stations in New York and LA sold out long time ago, those kind of operators, because the money was just so huge. And I think the family that I work for is more interested in service and legacy and having a good business that throws off cash flow than cashing out for some big giant whatever. And that should be, applauded and hopefully it continues. My own personal story, Cynthia, is that I was a kid in Chicago. I spent a lot of time watching TV. I was not good at sports in the afternoon. I was the kid that ran home off the school bus so he wouldn't get beat up by the other kids. So I made my friends on TV, and my parents were very supportive. My father was a corporate attorney. He knew about my love of TV and all this. And when he traveled to other cities, he would bring me TV guides back from other cities so I could see what other stations were doing. And I would learn about other shows, and I put together my own little pretend schedules and all of that. So that was part of what I did. And then I also had little 8mm and then 16mm cartoons, home movies with sound. My dad was a gadget guy, so we had a sound projector. And one day when I was in 5th grade, he said, Neal, we could splice all these together on a big reel and you could go show them for other kids' birthday parties and get paid. So to make a long story short, through my high school career, I was showing movies for kids' birthday parties. And by the early mid 70s, I was making $25 or $30 an hour doing that when my friends were at McDonald's making $2.25 minimum wage. Once I could drive, my parents didn't limit me to 4 jobs a weekend anymore because they were the ones having to drive me around and leave me there. So I watched the kids react to the cartoons, and I would rearrange the order of the cartoons. I was really teaching myself programming and what's called tent polling of programs. And I used the story I just told you to get my first job in TV because I was in radio and I wanted to get in TV. And this new station in Chicago was going on the air. And I knew the guy who owned it, sort of ancillary manner. And I sat on his doorstep for months until he hired me because he said he could hire all kinds of experienced people. I said, no, I know this. I'm Chicago. I can do this and I'm going to be cheaper than them, kind of thing. So, and I was there for about 11 years and helped build a very, very successful station. And then I saw an opportunity at Weigel when their local station in Chicago was going to have to change formats from Spanish and brokered programming to general market. And I raised my hand and said, you have a sleeping giant and I can make this happen. And that was 31 years ago. And I'm still there.
That's following your dream. And a lot of people, they get sidetracked, life happens and they don't get that chance. Listeners, the model that Neal is talking about of that family-owned business, that privately held business, is what life used to be like. That's what the stores were, Marshall Field's and Dayton's and Mervyn's. Life was all about businesses that were held by much smaller entities than they are today. The beauty of the whole host of networks that Weigel Broadcasting offers, it's like guerrilla television. That's guerrilla, G-U-E-R-I-L-L-A. They are kind of just giving it to us. They're giving it to us straight. And it's this gift. It's this sight into time capsules and an understanding of life, of American life. And so sometimes that context is really important. And the beauty is that it's almost meta because the safety and the environment you've had to grow these networks for 15 years it would never have succeeded otherwise. And so my gratitude is not just to you, but for all of those who have supported you and recognized that there is this market. Vintage television is definitely part of our experience.
Well, thank you. And, we kind of call it comfort TV too, because in these very unsettled and crazy and stressful times, it really is a joy to escape with either sitcoms or our crime dramas. When you're watching Streets of San Francisco or you're watching Matlock, it's not a heavy duty. It's fun and it's relaxing. And one of the things I thought about when we were going to talk today is the fact that I have consciously made an effort, especially with our Catchy Comedy Network, to highlight the evolution of women in sitcoms and how they were portrayed as well as how they contributed behind the scenes. So can we talk about that for a minute?
Let's.
We have sitcoms that range from Donna Reed, who, that was a very traditional late 50s, early 60s sitcom in a lot of ways produced by her husband, which that's sort of like the old kind of school of shows like that. What people don't know, and I think you're going to be talking to her daughter, is that Donna Reed was an amazing feminist. And she was very involved in the anti-war movement during Vietnam. She was a good businesswoman too. She did her show, and it's not, I don't think you want to bash her for what she did on her show. She represented what was acceptable to get on TV, but it helped her to have a voice off of TV and to do a lot of things that were very important. I think she's one of the most underrated and forgotten people in the movement to move women away from what Donna Reed portrayed on TV to what she became. Not that she was a clown on TV. She wasn't.
No, oh no.
Yeah.
I mean, if I can just interject, because
Yes.
the placement in the timeline of women, and the Donna Reed Show was a sitcom, but it was not physical comedy. It was sort of situational, universal, the universal that we think Norman Lear brought to the Bunker household with All in the Family. The Donna Reed Show, first of all, is named after the lead woman. It is all about a day in her life. At the time that it was out, we were coming off of Leave It to Beaver, and Barbara Billingsley, probably a very talented woman, but we knew where she stood. You had all of the Andy Griffith ones where the women were very, very distant as far as characters. You had Gidget, as much as Sally Field regrets doing it. The Patty Duke Show, a woman coming from film, just as Donna Reed did, but again, depicting as a teenager. So the Donna Reed Show broke that ground in particular. And then just really for 1958, 59, 60 audience, introduced some feminist themes without using that word, but introduced agency and decision-making and a certain valuing of a woman's role in the household and in the community. And I just got that after watching 5 or 6 episodes so that I could interview Mary. I had never seen it. It was not available in Minneapolis when I was growing up. It was airing while I was born. And so in 1973, 74, could you have seen the Donna Reed Show in the Twin Cities? Probably not.
No.
So as you bring all of this up, and then we'll talk about who followed Donna Reed, because for me, the timeline, the mid-60s was a little you had Eve Arden and you had some really big names kind of swooping in for short seasons. And then you had Marlo Thomas, who broke the mold.
Right. And I love that girl. I love that show. Cynthia, I had a little crush on her when I was a little kid because that's when it was on the network. But that's the timeline. She was the independent woman on her own, dating a guy. Her parents were the traditional, she still was a little bit, she was independent, but she still had Donald. Okay. The next evolution is Mary Tyler Moore. She did terrific things with that show that you see on the air and then things you don't see on the air. And some things that CBS made her do. I mean, she couldn't be divorced. You know better than me, Cynthia. You probably studied it more. But that show happened in part because that girl was successful and women were coming into their own in new ways. And Mary Tyler Moore, even today, it looks a little quaint, but that was a big deal. That show was a big deal for women.
That girl only had maybe 2 or 3 women writers. and the Mary Tyler Moore
Right.
Show, those showrunners and Grant Tinker, everybody wanted to make sure that what was becoming the Mary brand was generated by women and launched so many careers.
Right. And that is a really important point. Treva Silverman and all these other writers were involved in that show and did amazing things with it. We missed someone that I want to go back to, and we talked about that Donna Reed wasn't a clown and not a clown kind of show. Lucille Ball was kind of a clown, but everyone has to remember she basically ended up running the darn studio, and owning it, taking over from Desi. And she was a very shrewd person, shrewd business person with immense talents behind the camera and on the camera. And one of her biggest, and I read about this, it holds true. One of her biggest decisions was to not mess things up. She kept most of the people that Desi had at Paramount after they got divorced and she got the studio and all that. She was bright enough to know, don't mess with success. And she built on that success. And you can probably talk more about Lucille Ball and everything she did and what she meant in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever. But I have to tell you, something that's coming to Catchy shortly is a first in television. Every one of Lucille Ball's shows is going to be in one place on Catchy. It's never happened before. That's I Love Lucy, The Lucy Show, The Lucy Desi Comedy Hour, Here's Lucy, which we're going to premiere, which has her daughter in it, and even Life with Lucy, which was her last somewhat, maybe she shouldn't have done it series, but it was important to bring them all together. And what we did is we sat down with Lucy Arnaz to get her recollections of being on Here's Lucy, as well as what it was like living with TV stardom, superstardom, who she thought were just mom and dad. In between all these episodes, and we're going to run a whole mix of those things in a block on Saturday night, in between all of that, you're going to get Lucy's thoughts. And that's the difference of our networks, Cynthia. We're not just trying to pile on the shows. We're trying to give them some context with the resources we have to make a difference.
I'm thrilled that you're bringing Lucy Arnaz Jr., as I call her, into the mix, mining her memories, because Lucille Ball wrote a memoir or two, but was very surface. Lucille Ball and Betty White and Angie Dickinson, they are a generation that never told their secrets, never spoke of their struggles to any great length. I just think Lucille Ball held her cards to her vest. And so my hope is that Lucy, under Lucy Arnaz, recognizes this is an opportunity to celebrate some of the incredible tenacity and the fights that her mother had and who she went to the well for, both on behalf of her own series, as well as everything else she was responsible at Desilu for. I'm really psyched to know that's in the pipeline.
We shot our first set, and we'll probably shoot some more with her. And we will have a movie that she executive produced. We'll be running too. Lucy and Desi, a home movie that she put together. We'll be running that one week, and some other things it's all things Lucy. And again, she really changed television, and we want to celebrate her and everything she's done. And I'll give you one real quick story. You mentioned about the things she did while she was running Desilu. I don't know if a lot of your listeners / viewers know, but Lucy was responsible for Star Trek, for greenlighting Star Trek. She was given the following pitch about it. It's a science fiction version of Wagon Train. It is Wagon Train in space. They are on a trek. They are searching to get somewhere. That's what the show is. And she says, okay, I kind of get that. And that thing might not have happened if Lucille Ball, maybe she was too busy to concentrate on that day, but just said, okay, it's a good pitch. And maybe Lucy will tell us what she knows about that.
While we're talking about Desilu, the production, the quality, and really the ability for I Love Lucy to have been one of those reruns, those syndicated series that managed to be front and center through the 70s and through the 80s. You could always turn on the TV and possibly found I Love Lucy, Hogan's Heroes, and Green Acres.
I cannot get through an episode of Hogan's Heroes either, but it's not my schedule. It's for the people. And the ratings for that show are really good. If someone asked me, what's your favorite show on MeTV? I'd have trouble figuring out exactly which one it is, but I do have it. But my least favorite show, you just named it.
How about that? See, we have a lot. But talk a little bit about what it means To set your sights on a series and then trying to bring it to 21st century television, the technology involved, do some transfer better than others? What's that process?
I'll start by saying this all happened because of Desi Arnaz, because Desi Arnaz insisted that I Love Lucy be shot like a movie with a three camera setup and shot on film, not done live and recorded on film as a kinescope off a TV screen. He saw value in that show beyond it running. At the time when Lucy was on, they'd go off the air for 13 weeks in the summer and have a summer replacement show because no one really said, oh, we can't run those again. And in a lot of cases, there weren't any shows to run again because they were either live or done on primitive tape and kinescopes. So you have Desi Arnaz to thank for the rerun business. He really started that. Now, some of the shows you see on MeTV look like they were shot yesterday and they look better than they did on network TV. And that is because the studios or the people that own them have gone back to the negatives on those shows and created high definition versions of them. They've upgraded them to high definition. That's easy to do on filmed shows that were shot on film. Unfortunately, shows like All in the Family and Sanford and Son and the Norman Lear comedies of the 70s were shot on videotape, and videotape degrades. And I think it was a while. And if you made copies of copies, things started to get looking fuzzy and all. And even the originals, they had degraded through copying and all too much before the digital age hit. They're saved now. They're not going to decline any more than they did. And there are now some AI processes that people are working on that may be able to enhance the way some of these shows work. And they're in testing now, and some things are out there that are better. But anything shot on tape is never going to look that good. Now, there's some shows on film that still don't look good because they haven't been upgraded. I'll give you an example. The Brady Bunch, shot on film, and I watch it on Sundays on MeTV, and it's kind of soft focus. Paramount, which owns the series, has deemed it's not economically desirable or financially fast recovery of money to do that. If I said to them, please do an HD version of Brady Bunch, they will say, well, that's going to cost $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, whatever it costs to do. And you're not going to pay that license fee. And I'll say, you're right. I can't pay that additional license fee because we can't generate that kind of revenue off of it. And I would say, but long term, you have the legacy, you have it forever looking better and all that. But sometimes, and I'm not trying to pick on Paramount, they have new owners and they may look at their library very differently and have different budgets and all. Sometimes they just don't think that far out. I will tell you that the people at Warner Brothers have done an amazing job of upgrading their programming. And most of the things we get from them are in HD or semi-HD or close to it. But there's one thing, whether you have good prints or not, that can screw it all up from getting it on the air, Cynthia. Can you guess what that is?
Music?
That's right. Yes. If I was running a quiz show, you'd win something right now. The music thing is so crazy and so frustrating, and I try to understand it. But the easiest way for me to explain it is that a lot of times the music in these shows was only licensed from whoever wrote them and performed them for a certain period of time. They didn't think about forever in reruns, and they didn't do what's called a buyout for the music. And the hard part about all of this, and I found this dealing with the studios, is over the years, there haven't been people that really cared about this stuff that much, and they've moved, and what's called the cue sheets, the list where all the music exists and who wrote it and all of that stuff, and what publisher published it and all, has been lost. And so there's some shows where they don't have the information. There are other shows where it's too expensive again to clear the music. Like, we're not going to pay $100,000 to clear a song from Tour of Duty or something like that. So either the show sits on the shelf then, Cynthia, or they replace it with some kind of generic music. Like the show Bosom Buddies, which I bet is not one of your favorites. They changed the opening song, which used to be My Life by Billy Joel, with some other whatever. It's also why you don't see WKRP in Cincinnati on MeTV anymore. All the music, Disney has it now, and they're real sticklers about music clearance, and they haven't paid to clear the music on that show. So until a very wealthy streamer like Netflix says, I'll pay you millions of dollars for this show, will they go out and clear the music? So that's another reason why you don't see certain things.
I included in my notes to you, is that the reason Murphy Brown is sort of hung, suspended in air, and Chicago Hope, which was a fairly popular series in its 5-season run as it was running kind of alongside ER. But Chicago Hope is nowhere.
Yeah. And I don't know about Chicago Hope. I know that Murphy Brown may have some music replaced because it's been on some of the diginets and in syndication a little bit, but it never did really well in the ratings. So it's not on the top of everybody's list of what to put on. And it's unlike a show like Dick Van Dyke, they were topical.
It is questionable if one could say Murphy Brown aged well. I will say that Candice Bergen's hair aged very well.
Yeah. Yeah. I met her once at a step and repeat, when they were selling the show. And it was near the end of the day. I could just tell she just loathed standing there in her heels for all these hours, shaking hands with all these TV people. But she had a great show that was in the zeitgeist of those years. And I mean, we just started Everybody Loves Raymond on MeTV, and that's a show that still works because they were timeless too. It's family interaction, family conflict, or whatever you want to call it. Mothers are universal. They may not all be as over-exaggerated as Marie is on that show, but there's something about that show that doesn't say it's 30 years old. But Murphy Brown, it does.
Netflix, I recall a couple of years ago, spent like every nickel they had for Friends to get Friends on. And that was this big selling point that everyone needed to be on Netflix because that was the series they wanted to watch. And I end that statement with a question mark. As you now have this large cohort of networks, what are you doing to sort of continue to differentiate the Weigel product from Hulu and, the little bones that get tossed on Peacock and Hulu and Netflix?
Well, that's a really good question. It's a hard question. And if I had all the answers to that, I'd sleep better tonight. But one of the things we do is, and the example is what we're doing with Lucy Arnaz. It's curation, it's positioning shows besides just putting them on the air. One of our strategies, and I can't give away all our secret sauce, but if you look at the schedules for all of these networks, there are a whole lot of shows on them, a whole lot, like 60 different shows on MeTV. If you look at some of our competitors in the diginet world and in some of these other places where you can watch, you will find on a 24-hour basis, there may be 4 or 5 shows. And that's a different strategy, and it works for them. And it's sometimes they say, well, we're going to blow our brains out and buy 5 big shows. The only issue I have with that is if you don't like those 5 shows, are you going to get people? But that model does work. And we emulate it a little bit with our hours, like 5 hours of a show, maybe on start or the closer for 5 hours on one day, that kind of thing. But it is hard because you can go and watch Friends anytime you want on Netflix, and it is popular. That's a show that every generation seems to pick up on. And even though there's some dated things in that show and the way that they handled situations and all, kids today seem to still get into that show. There must be something about those lovable loser characters and everybody in there that people like.
I'll throw in my own answer to the question I asked you, and that is, I think about it when I think about how Major League Baseball is struggling right now to deliver what they want to do is they want to be able to control the broadcast so that every single market is sort of doing the same thing, and it's going to have a paywall, and it's going to have to be, this just is as complicated as it can be, because that evidently is what you do these days. And I think about who watches baseball, who listens to baseball. It's on every single night in, I don't want to say this, but the nursing home. It is what people have on in the background as part of summer. And the idea that you're going to break it all up or you're going to stick it all in one package that somebody has to spend a huge amount of money for, on top of perhaps their cable, they're going to lose people. They're going to lose the nursing home because the nursing home can only pay for cable. They aren't going to have somebody come over with the Roku to find the MLB network to turn it on. And you are sitting there right there in the cable channel. And I realize everybody's cutting cords. You're also there in apps and everything else. The notion that a Netflix subscription, which only goes up, it's never gone down, Apple Plus, same thing, all of them. We are approaching an economic question. And I applaud the fact that you're sitting there in cable creating a tremendous diversity of offerings.
Well, Cynthia, thank you. Here's the thing. It's not only that. If you have an antenna, all of these are free. In a city like Minneapolis, we're over the air free on the sub channels of all these different stations. If I leave everybody here with one thing, it's go buy an antenna and attach it to your TV and switch to OTA over the air and see how much you will be shocked. There's probably 80 channels in the Twin Cities to choose from. Many of them are on cable, but some of them aren't. And you'll be surprised at what you find. And the picture quality is stunning because it's not compressed. It's either in very good SD or HD, and people have forgotten about antennas. Back to your baseball thing, it's not just the people in the nursing home. Those are the people leaving us. It is the young people, and it is the casual viewers who would be flipping the free over-the-air channels and find a baseball game and watch it. I will tell you from experience that I've seen in our marketplace is that more and more of the teams are realizing this, that they can't put it all behind a paywall because they need to recruit fans. They need more interest in the teams. They need more people to see these games. And I think in the next few years, you're going to see, and it may not be 114 games like it used to be on WGN in Chicago for the Cubs, but you may see 25 or 30 games or a game of the week or 2 games of the week on broadcast TV as a simulcast of what they're doing elsewhere, because the teams, when you go behind paywalls, you restrict yourself to the most loyal fans willing to pay a lot of money, and that's not enough people to sustain and build your business.
I hope there will be a handful of games that everybody can watch. And listeners, the whole idea of the antenna. So I remember, I was crabby when all of a sudden you had to have cable just to get the basic channels. And we had a couple TVs that weren't hooked up to cable for whatever reason. And they were cute little TVs. And now you can go to the hardware store, Target, wherever you're going, and buy one of these antennas for, isn't that like $30, give or take?
Well, it can be any. If you want to go back and do it like in the 70s and have the best reception and the most channels, you put an outdoor antenna on your roof, like all those sitcoms and everything where you see people put an antenna up. If you look around your neighborhood, you may still see a few of those up or some new ones to pick these things up. But yeah, don't buy the cheapest one. There are some sites. There's a guy called the Antenna Man on YouTube that can teach you which ones you should get based on where you live. But it could be 20, 30, $40. Best Buy sells out of them all the time. Walmart sells out of them. There are hundreds of thousands of antennas being sold every month in this country now. And that's good because your cable, your satellite, your streaming, your something is going to go down someday. And if, God forbid, there's a national emergency and we're still on the air, the only way you're going to get us is with an antenna.
And if you have cable, we have cable, we are paying for every single cable box in the house. Anyway, we leave it to you listeners to decide how you might want to explore the abundance of programming that's out there that actually you can get for free once you pay for an antenna. So think about that and report back to me and Neal about what your findings are and what you've discovered.
All your local news stations will be there.
Yes. Kind of important if Xfinity or whoever your cable provider is goes down. Let's shift for a second. We talked about women in comedy, and the women's focused network that you have is Start TV, which has been around since 2016. Is that right?
Yes.
And in those early years, there was Family Law and Strong Medicine, shows that, to your earlier point, kind of come across a little grainy. They didn't convert very well. But I had never seen either one of them, and so I was kind of fascinated watching them. Discuss the decisions that you make about pulling Family Law, which was from the early 90s, starring Dixie Carter and some others. And it was about a law firm, and they dealt with family law issues. And so it was kind of progressive in many ways, and they dealt with matters of the day. And then Strong Medicine was about a women's healthcare, a clinic, and a women's style hospital, which was kind of a unique blend. And so it was a medical drama, but then it also got into progressive feminist issues. How do you decide when to pull from the rotation, when to add?
Well, ratings dictate much of this. But you also brought up the quality of the prints on the 2 series you meant aren't really good. And the studios aren't going to upgrade them. They were good helping to get us started and establish themes for us, and they may be back. I mean, and I don't have the schedule in front of me this second, but Family Law might be on very early in the morning now. I got to take a look at it. But we use those shows in ancillary time periods. But the core of the schedule are the really well-known, most beloved series, the Major Crimes, Kira Sedgwick as the closer. And we've expanded beyond just crime or lawyers with things like the Gilmore Girls, which was a big get for us. That is a mother-daughter relationship show. It's got a cult following that we think could be broadened, and there's a lot of elements of that show that help enhance and broaden what we're doing on Start TV. We don't want every female on there to have a gun.
So I think about Rizzoli and Isles and Major
Yes.
Crimes and The Closer. Those were TNT cable original programming. Was it easier to work with whoever owns that than it would have been something that aired on CBS or ABC?
No, because those shows are owned by the studios. Warner Brothers, which own TNT, has most of those shows. And the only issue I have with it all is that they're not making any more of those. They got out of that business in part because of streaming taking over so much of that original production. We need some more female-led procedural dramas, and they need to do them in a way that makes them valuable for syndication, which means we need 100 episodes or more. We need them all to be the same length. We need you to shoot cover footage when you're swearing and doing scenes that make no sense for broadcast TV. I'll give you a show. It's not one of those, but a show I love and would love to put on Start TV is Grace and Frankie. That is a great, fun show. I don't know how you feel about it, but I loved it. And I can't, you look at Jane Fonda and you say, how does she do it? And the two of them and their chemistry. But think about some of the subjects of that show and the businesses they went into and all of that. You cannot do that on broadcast TV.
And the language throughout, it does preserve, however, the notion that women's-based comedy, and older women in particular, I think Hot in Cleveland is one. It's probably the sitcom that I think is the funniest and best written, and the comic timing of those four women is...
Yeah, and we run it every night on Catchy Comedy. And I wanted that series because Catchy, without saying this is a network for lots of women, it is, with That Girl and Rhoda and Lucy's and all that other stuff, and Hot in Cleveland right in prime time. It's like, they just make me laugh out loud. And it's a great show that I think is underexposed.
I just can't imagine how it is that Sean Hayes from Will and Grace, who is talented, he is a showrunner, he has got 1,000 projects going on at any given time, could not get a green light from one of the networks that Hot in Cleveland, starring Betty White, Wendy Malick, Valerie Bertinelli, and Jane Leeves, did not land on CBS, ABC, or NBC.
Yeah. It's beyond me too, but at least they got it done, and they got, unlike Netflix, they did it with the idea that there'd be a syndication life. And I think Netflix and some of the other streamers have gotten a hold of the idea now that they've got to do the things I talked about, because they're out there trying to get us, trying to get some interest in Grace and Frankie, for example. And we have great interest. I said, where's the cover footage? How do we get them all down to 24 minutes apiece? Because they were all different lengths. You can do that, the creativity. Well, it's going to be very hard. I mean, we may take a try at editing that show. We have to take out some episodes when they go into business with a certain kind of thing for women with arthritis, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
That whole thing may have to come out, but we'd like to see if we can make that show work. Then we're looking at, you have to look at things like, will Emily in Paris work? Would Younger work? Would, shows like that work in this environment? That's the kind of stuff we think about.
And like Only Murders in the Building, which is a Hulu original,
Yes.
that one is being developed, and there's not nearly as much profanity and innuendo, and so
they learned, and whoever went in that with, I want a back end. They call it the back end. That's what syndication is. I want something beyond the initial, and maybe that's because the people at Hulu, which is ABC, which is Disney, and all of that, they know, and they have networks and things to feed. And understand that business. Netflix doesn't own a TV network now.
So this has been incredible and fun. And I've just shared with you that my probably favorite sitcom, I'll say that The Patty Duke Show and That Girl, whenever it is on TV, if I'm surfing and there is The Patty Duke Show, my jaw drops and I just have to stop what I'm doing and I just need to watch it because it's there's something there What if I could just ask Neal, the regular TV guy, the watcher since he was a wee
Yeah.
one, what's your
Yeah.
favorite comedy of all time?
Okay. It used to be I Love Lucy. And maybe because I met Carl Reiner and I met Dick Van Dyke, and I always wanted to meet Mary Tyler Moore, but the Dick Van Dyke Show, the way it is written, the way Mary and Dick Van Dyke, first of all, who we're about to celebrate 100 episodes for his 100th birthday, the way he moves is almost, humans can't move like Dick Van Dyke can move on that show. And there is so much talent there behind the screen, in front of the screen. If you haven't watched the Dick Van Dyke Show, don't be afraid. It's in black and white. Black and white's okay. And just give that show a chance. That would be my favorite comedy.
And drama.
I'm not talking about Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. Those are too new because I love those. It has to be Perry Mason.
Wow, I did not see that coming.
Yeah. What I love is seeing Los Angeles in the 1950s and very early 60s, the whole mid-century modern look of that show, all the old stock Hollywood actors, character actors and stuff on that show. And it's just, they got through 271 episodes of that show. And you could probably do a whole podcast on Della Street. And
I probably should.
yeah. And the relationship with Perry and how she portrayed women in that role, on that show. There's a very interesting episode where they have an abandoned baby and she has to take the baby home. And it shows her in a different way. And there's other episodes where she's basically solving the crime with Perry or for Perry.
Listeners, that is actually one of the fun things of going back in and maybe not even having ever seen an episode that you just decide, I'm going to watch some Perry Mason. And you're watching it for not so much the plot, because the plot's just moved a lot more slowly because there's nothing else to do. You watched, and you were supposed to be pulled in. But yes, Della Street is smarter and she has an incredible wardrobe and she's representing the working woman in 1957. Who was sort of then balanced by Donna Reed in the home. You watch Barnaby Jones, which I've been doing as research for the book, and Lee Merriweather carried that show. You did not watch to see Betty Ebsen. You watched Barnaby Jones because Lee Merriweather had it all figured out. She just was such a natural. I actually have emailed her at leemerriweather.com or whatever, asking her whether or not she'd like to talk, not for the podcast necessarily, and I never got a response.
Here, I got to tell you something. It's interesting you say that about Barnaby Jones. We run that on MeTV at like 4 a.m. And one of the reasons I run it at 4 a.m. is because it's a very quiet show. Barnaby Jones never raises his voice much. There's not a lot of gunshot. It's very quiet. And I don't want people to wake up and turn off their TVs.
Or that you are up at 4 o'clock with a baby or something. And
right. You don't need...
Yeah.
It's
chill. It's a chill thing.
That's a programming secret I just gave up.
We could talk, and I would pull more secrets from you, Neal, but it has been a tremendous honor to have this conversation, to get a little understanding of what goes on behind the curtain in Chicago at Weigel Broadcasting as you deliver us all of that programming. In the show notes, we will have the links to Dabl and MeTV and MeTV Plus, or is it Me Plus TV?
MeTV Plus, MeTV Tunes, which we didn't even talk about. It's all classic animation.
Yeah, we did not. The Movies Network, that harkens back to the black and white movies that were on at 10:30 at night. I would watch the first 8 minutes and then I would fall asleep with my can of Tab next to my bedside. No amount of caffeine was going to keep me up. You've got Catchy Comedy and Heroes and Icons, everything that Weigel brings us, we are grateful for. We are grateful for you, Neal Sabin. And because of this conversation, which, as I admitted up front, was 9 some years in the making, you are why I podcast.
Wow. Thank you so much. Get an antenna. Enjoy.
Many thanks to Mary Lou Morose for editing this episode. When you have a chance, go to tvherstory.com. You'll be able to see the entire archive as well as a lot of other good stuff. Sign up for our newsletter while you're there. I promise your information will never be sold. Lastly, the music you hear is Jazzer's Take Me Higher, found at Free Music Archive. Thanks for listening.